When it comes to the world of personal finance, school still doesn't cut it. Unfortunately, today you could graduate with a bachelor's, a master's, a PhD, or a college degree and still not know the fundamentals of personal finance. And so today I'm going to share with you the 12 things school still doesn't teach you about personal finance that you and I need to know. At number 12, we have the use of credit cards. Now, I'm not suggesting that schools should teach you and I how to use credit cards. No. We don't need their help with that because financial institutions do a great job of telling you and I how, when, and where we can use our credit cards. And the truth of the matter is, the règle d'or is simply that you should use it as much as you can. You see, in Canada, consumer debt is at $72,000 per Canadian on average, and 92% of credit card holders carry a balance from month to month. So in essence, what's happening is that we're using a lot of credit all the time. So the things that our school system could be teaching us about credit cards will be the following. Teach us a bit about how to calculate interest and why interest rates are so high, and how, as a consumer, I should try to pay off my balance on my credit card as quickly as I can, or at least before the interest is charged. Number 2, share with me and educate me on what the alternatives are to credit. Maybe I can use debit. Maybe I can pay cash. Maybe I could use a Visa debit. Maybe I could buy now and pay later, or use a prepaid card. Number 3, teach me about the reward programs, the so-called reward programs that banks have to offer. Now, I want to be very cautious here about reward programs. You've got a big group of very smart people that build these programs, and the fundamental objective of reward programs is to drive the use of the product. That's why they're built. They're not built to give you an extraordinary amount of value. They're really built to try and incentivize you and me to use the credit card product even more. With that being said, there may be some reward programs that might be of interest and of value for you and I if we know how to use them. So that's another area where schools could actually be helpful. At number 11, we have the whole notion of passive income. You see, I find it interesting how school spends a lot of time telling you that you need to study hard, work hard, and get a job. And they don't spend a lot of time telling you about the notion of passive income. Because with passive income, you still have to work, but you can leverage your time, your knowledge, and your money so that you could work less and still continue to generate income. And that's the whole notion and benefit of passive income. Whether you're investing in real estate, whether you're investing in dividend stocks, or whether you're just starting a side hustle. The whole notion of a passive income is that you're able to build wealth faster with less effort in the long run. Again, our school system is completely silent for the most part when it comes to passive income. At number 10, we talk about financial goal setting. It's interesting. Once again, our school spends a lot of time telling us that we're going to graduate in 2 years, in 3 years, we put a study plan together, and so on and so forth. But we have very few financial goals. When do you want to be debt free? When do you want to buy your first car? Purchase your first home? When do you want to be financially quote-unquote free or independent? What kind of gifts do you want to make in the future? What kind of housing would you like to live? What kind of lifestyle would you like to have? All of these financial goals are things that you ought to be taught in school, and you should be putting strategies and plan together in order to reach them. Unfortunately, our school system doesn't spend a lot of time on the whole notion of building financial goals and building a financial strategy for you to actually reach those goals. At number 9, we have the whole concept of living below your means. Now, this is a really interesting one because there's a notion out there that if you study hard, you're going to get a job, and if you're going to get a job, you're going to be okay. Well, the truth of the matter is that's not true. 34% of Canadians graduate with a university degree, and almost 50% of Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. Now, I want you to think about that for a moment. We have a good graduation rate in terms of education, holistically speaking, in Canada. But yet, 1 out of 2 Canadians is living paycheck to paycheck, waiting for the next pay to come in order to pay their bills. There's a disconnect here. And the truth of the matter is, there's really no correlation between your educational degree and how well you're doing financially. Some of us know doctors, artists, lawyers that make a lot of money and that are always broke. The truth of the matter is, winning with money has a lot more to do with your behaviors and a lot less to do with how much money you're earning. In a recent study of 10,000 millionaires, 70% of them made less than $100,000 per year. Well, if you're going to be worth $1 million making less than $100,000 a year, earlier, it means you've got the right behaviors, and these are the behaviors that ought to be taught. And living below your means is one of those behaviors. At number 8, we have the whole notion of insurance, car insurance, life insurance, rent insurance, disability insurance, so on and so forth. Insurance could be a very important aspect of your financial planning because it's a tool that you can use in order to manage risk. A lot of people don't realize that the more expensive the car, the more expensive the insurance. And so what you ought to do is think it through really wisely and carefully, and perhaps purchase a used car or a lesser renowned branded car in order to be able to save for insurance. When it comes to life insurance, are you getting term insurance? Are you getting whole life insurance? So on and so forth. These questions are questions that you ought to be able to answer very early in your career in order to set you on the right financial path. Unfortunately, our schools spend very zero time whatsoever covering that topic in class. At number 7, we have retirement planning. There are a number of tools that are available for you today in order to plan for your retirement. RESPs, RRSPs, TFSA, the new FHSA, all of these programs are available in order to help Canadians like myself and yourself to accelerate our wealth building potential over time. Now, the truth of the matter is these products are different with some variances, and some actually have some cons associated to them. I know a number of accounts, for example, that don't like the notion of RSPs altogether because it's not tax saved, it's tax deferred. So it's not a problem if your income level is very low when you retire, but if your income level is fairly high, which we all would aspire to, then the RRSP actually just puts you in a situation where you're going to get taxed at a higher rate later in life, and that's not necessarily a good thing. All said, the whole notion of planning around your retirement early in your career and your professional career is extremely important, and that's a topic that should be covered in school. At number 7, we have the whole notion of debt management. Now, we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. Now, we know that Canadians owe an enormous amount of debt. With that being said, the whole notion of how to manage debt and how to repay debt is extremely important. In our situation, in Canada specifically, one of the core things that we ought to be taught is the snowball effect, or the avalanche of method of paying down debt. The idea here is that you want to get rid of debt as quickly as you can, because debt is the one thing that's going to hold you back from your financial freedom and your financial objectives. Unfortunately, once again, our schools are almost completely silent when it comes to the notion of debt management. We rack up a bunch of school debt, consumer debt, and a bunch of garbage debt throughout our lives, and then we end up being 55 and 65 and realizing that all we can do is play the lottery to try and get out of it, which is horrible. At number 4, we have the whole concept of investing early and compound interest. Now, interestingly enough, this is actually a topic that I remember I covered when I was in high school, and actually when I did my MBA. It was covered lightly, but it wasn't deep dived into. So on this one, I'll give the schools a bit of a pass if it's still taught in today in 2024. But the whole notion of investing early and leveraging compound interest is critical to financial management and personal wealth creation. Banks do it all the time. Big equity funds invest early and they drip it over time if they need to. And you and I should actually be doing the exact same thing. You know, the truth of the matter is if you and I have the good habits of investing early and leveraging compound interest, these are typically things that we'll also try and teach to people that are in our circles or in our families. There'll be a multiplier effect. At number 3, we have understanding credit and understanding how your behavior will impact your credit score. You see, it's interesting to think that in order to build credit, you must have a credit card. That's absolutely not true. You can absolutely build credit without using a credit card. There are a number of additional tools that you can use in order to build credit. When you're paying your cell phone bill and you're paying your utilities, you're actually building credit. When you're using a prepaid card and making your payments when you're supposed to, you're actually building credit, and so on and so forth. And so the whole notion of how to build credit with a credit card and or without a credit card is extremely important. And again, it's an opportunity for schools to actually teach that kind of material. At number 2, we have the fundamentals of budgeting. Now, this is a really interesting one, and I still don't understand why schools are not spending more time on talking about budget. Budgeting is simply tracking your income and your expenses. When you really think about it, budgeting has 2 components. There's the tracking component, and then there's the retrospective component. In my opinion, the retrospective component is the most important of the 2, because this is when you look back at the previous month and you see if the money went exactly where where you said you wanted it to go. This is where you're starting to hack your behaviors, and you're trying to self-correct where your money is going to go for the following month. That's the power of budgeting. Now, the secret power of budgeting is that when you do it often enough, you get into a habit and a behavior of monitoring your money. And when you do that, you start mastering money and telling money exactly where it ought to go. Now, this is the behavior that most Canadians unfortunately don't have. This is why 50% of us are living paycheck to paycheck. It's because we tend to buy stuff that we don't really need on a whim without having it planned. And then we get hit with a bill and don't know what to do. At number one, this to me is the most important personal finance tip of the world, of the decade. It is the one thing, in my opinion, that will set you free and set you on a different financial goal. And it is simply the notion of building and acquiring an emergency fund. Now, an emergency fund is 3 to 6 months of your living expenses that's saved up in some kind of a liquid account, let it be your checking account, a TSFA, or something that's highly liquid. You want to be able to get that money out within 24 to 48 hours. And so we're talking here about the notion of building that 3 to 6 month reserve. There are really two massive benefits to doing that. And again, I'm surprised schools don't spend more time on this. The first one is a really practical one. If you have an emergency, then you can just use your emergency fund to take care of it, which is great. But by doing that, you're bypassing what most of us normally do in the case of an emergency. You're bypassing credit. You're not using a line of credit, or you're not using a credit card. You're just using cash for that emergency. So by doing that, you're putting yourself ahead of the pack, because you're not one of those Canadians who's just gonna hop on a line of credit or on a credit card in order to make that purchase. The second secret power or secret sauce about an emergency fund is the actual path you have to go through in order to get one. You see, in order to build an emergency fund, you have to control your money. And in the process of doing that, you're actually going to develop new behaviors and new habits. And this is exactly what happened to me and my wife when we started building our emergency fund. We started enjoying saving money. We started detesting and hating debt. We started liking saving even more money, to the point where we had enough money in our emergency fund to start investing in income properties. That's the best place to be in. So when you're able to build your emergency fund over time, you're hacking your habits and you're hacking your behaviors. And that is a great accelerator to personal finance and building your wealth over time. So there you have it. You have the 12 things that schools don't teach today when it comes to personal finance. If you stayed here to the end, thank you for listening to this content. Smack the like button, share it with a friend, and I'll see you on the next one.